Greetings everyone, warm welcome. It's an honour to have you here at the Saphira Centre of Shamanism, where we break down the ancient esoteric practices of shamanism and the occult, bringing them into balance with the deep psyche. My name is Luke, experienced practitioner and mentor of the shamanic and occult sciences. It is an honour to have you here. Thank you for joining once again. Be sure to find me over on Patreon. First link within the description of this video. I've recently moved my premium membership over to my Patreon, so you will find lots of different tiers that will give you access to different levels of exclusive content, as well as different levels of access to me. First two tiers are if you're wanting to gain access to the main exclusive content, over 300 pieces of content relating to shamanism and the occult, with new content uploaded multiple times each week. You also have the opportunity to join the very powerful full moon rite of initiation, the transfiguration of Thalmael, a grand empowerment through all of the Clivothic spheres. Tier 3 and above are very much for gaining access to more advanced initiatory rituals and training webinars relating to the different occult sciences, and the opportunity to work closely with me as a mentor. Definitely check that out. I look forward to seeing you there. Access starts at just £20 per month. So today we are going to be discussing the concept of the personal metagod. Now this is something that is referred to in many different ways by many different names according to the source of information that you're looking at it from. The personal metagod is just one way of referring to it. I've also heard it referred to as the personal dragon. I've heard it referred to as the personal absolute, the microcosmic absolute, or just the unified self. What we are referring to here is the original aspect of your soul before it separated itself into duality and its primal essence. The personal metagod is essentially the non-dualistic aspect of your soul, the microcosmic Abraxian state, the unification of angel and demon and the primal self in one consciousness. So this is built off of the concept of the soul being made up of various components that hold both literal and archetypal representations of what each function of the soul actually is. The unified self, or the personal metagod, is made up of these three core essences: the higher self, also known as the holy guardian angel; the shadow self, also known as the personal daemon; and the spirit animal, also known as the prima materia, or the primal self. The purpose of alchemical work is to essentially learn to wield these different aspects of self effectively and ultimately return to that unified state of the personal metagod, the pure representation of individuation and integration, the balancing of opposites and the weakening of the veil between the conscious and unconscious mind. So today we're going to be diving into what the personal metagod actually is, exploring the higher self, the spirit animal, and the shadow self in depth, and the functions in which they play both individually and as a unified consciousness. I'm also going to be explaining some various methods that you can use to connect with the personal metagod, as well as connect with the higher self, shadow self, and the spirit animal. So definitely stay tuned as we dive in to the personal metagod, also known as the unified self. So first and foremost, we need to look into what a metagod actually is. So a metagod is a combined unified intelligence, a unified intelligence that contains three or more individual avatars before they were separated into individuals. The best way to describe this is to look at a pyramid and look at the top brick on a pyramid that has the influence over the lower bricks, but is being supported by the lower aspects of the pyramid. This is essentially how a metagod functions. We have one unified intelligence, but in order to extend its influence into the lower dimensions and have greater influence over the collective consciousness, it has to separate itself more. It has to separate itself down, and as it does so, it multiplies more and more and more. A bit like how we have the concept of source energy, what some people would call oneness or unity, that essentially has to define meaning for itself, so it separates into many and multiplies as it does so. And as it separates, it multiplies into more individual consciousness and basically becomes more individual as it moves into the lower dimensions of reality. This is the best way to describe what a metagod is. It is the unified intelligence that is essentially the original source of numerous different intelligences before they were separated into individuals. Let me give you an example explaining angelic and demonic intelligences. So how angelic and demonic hierarchies work is that, much like the dimensions, the further up you go, the more unrestrained they become, and the more vast and incomprehensible they become. And the further down you go, in other words, the further towards the earth plane you go, the more tangible and restricted they become. So basically, it is easier to interact with angelic or demonic intelligences that are closer to the human realm in vibration. Whereas if you tapped into the metagods, it would have an immensely powerful effect, but because the intelligence is so vast, your system will only be able to absorb a small portion of what that metagod is actually capable of. So understand that every angel and every daemon is essentially a metagod in its own right. So Lucifer or Metatron, for example, these are vast intelligences that are single unified consciousness, but in order to extend their influence into the collective consciousness, they then have to separate themselves more. So you can imagine them as being these big unified consciousness that then extend tendrils into the lower dimensions in order to extend their influence more. Some may even describe an archdaemon or an archangel as basically being a unified intelligence for many, many, many other angelic or demonic intelligences that are essentially assigned to that given place. What you also have to understand is that the archangels and the archdaemons are also avatars of a much bigger metagod as well. So these metagods are described in different ways according to the source. A very good source that I recommend for understanding the metagods, particularly within the primordial chaos, is to look into V.K. Jahannam's work. He has actually channeled names for the three core Clifothic metagods. Charvajoth being the unified intelligence of the 11 daemons that rule over the Clifothic spheres. The Goeticon, or the Goeticon, being the unified intelligence of all 72 daemons of the Ars Goetia, and Sithrakor being the unified intelligence of all 22 demons of the Tunnels of Set. There is also another concept being, if you look at the Shem angels, the 72 angels of the Shem Hamathrash, these also extend from a specific metagod as well, namely Mortefel. In my view as well, and this is my personal gnosis, the Sephirothic angels, the 10 angels that rule over the individual Sephiras, as well as any intelligences that dwell within the Sephirothic pathways as well that interconnect the spheres. These are also the products of a much bigger intelligence as well that I refer to in the format of the primordial man, known as Adam Kadmon, basically the unified intelligence of the entirety of the cosmos, the entirety of the multiverse. So you get the gist of what I'm saying here. Every intelligence comes from a bigger consciousness that operates within a higher dimension, a higher aspect of self, and every intelligence is somewhat a separation, okay, a individual avatar of a much bigger intelligence that has an overarching agenda. So we as human beings are no different. We also extend from our unified self, which is known as the personal absolute, the Abraxian state that is not limited by light or dark. But in order to define greater meaning for itself, that unified consciousness separates into duality, and those 3 points of separation hold individual roles when it comes to your personal evolution. The spirit animal, or the prima materia, representing your primal self, the aspect of who you are before you were shaped by societal conditioning. Some people would call this the draconian essence. The higher self, being the holy guardian angel, the aspect of your soul that dwells within light matter energy, within the multiverse itself, and acts as a guiding light through your microcosmic existence within this given multiverse. And then your shadow self, which is constantly getting you to own or trying to initiate you into owning what is hidden about yourself, what you cannot see about yourself. This is why we call it the personal daemon. And again, some people merge these two together. Some people merge the higher self and the shadow self together and see that as the daemon or the personal daemon. But in my view, and according to my gnosis and the gnosis of other practitioners, they are separate consciousness. The higher self being one aspect in the light matter, and the personal daemon being essentially the primordial aspect of that. But we need both in order to function effectively, much like how we need both the light in order to create order and clarity, and we also need the darkness to be able to rupture the outdated paradigms of the light so that we can grow beyond its predefined constraints. And in the middle of that is the spirit animal, that primal intelligence that represents the source in which your soul actually comes from. Now, the spirit animal is going to take on numerous different forms according to what it is that you need. Now, what the spirit animal is not is a power animal. Okay, power animal refers to, or animal totem refers to an animal guide, okay, like an animal spirit guide. And you can have multiple power animals for different purposes. Power animals are particularly present within New Age shamanism, animal spirits that you basically go and retrieve to help you embody a certain medicine in which that animal is resonant with. Now, power animals can mirror the qualities of your spirit animal back to you, but they are different things. Your spirit animal is going to take on different intelligences, different archetypal forms according to what it is that you need to master in order to step back into touch with your primal self. So sometimes your spirit animal might take on the form of a wolf, that's a popular one, a bear, a bat, a slug, whatever that may be, in order to help you embody that individual medicine that you need on the next step in your journey to be able to merge with a deeper aspect of your primal self. So understand here that the purpose of a lot of alchemical work is to learn how to merge with and master these different qualities of self. So you can see here that the actual source of the soul is the absolute, which is not dualistic in nature. In the macrocosm, this would be all thing and no thing at the same time. You could call it Abraxas, you could call it Yida. If you look into the Enochian magic, Yida is very similar energy to Abraxas in that context. Basically, all thing and no thing at the same time. So to define meaning for itself, it has to then extend into individual dualities, cultivating dark matter, unconsciousness, pure potential, and cultivating light from within the dark matter to give order, clarity, form, and meaning to the darkness. The best way to describe this within the macrocosm would be Kenneth Grant's concept of Universe A and Universe B. Universe A being the pre-constructed light matter multiverse, and Universe B essentially being the pure potential, the dark matter primordial chaos that holds no predefined form whatsoever. So if we look into occult work, we would have the right-hand path and the left-hand path, both of which as standalone concepts are entirely limiting, depending on how you, as a practitioner, interpret them. How most people interpret them is that the right-hand path is about honouring external divinity. So a lot of practices within the New Age spiritual community are going to be more right-hand path in nature, working with the concept of Great Spirit, working with intelligences and seeing these intelligences as higher consciousness. The left-hand path then being a path of deification, of actually learning how to see spirits as your equal. Now, if I was to choose a side, the left-hand path would be much more aligned to how I practice. I approach spirits as not higher intelligences, I approach them as friends, I approach them as allies. And in my view, according to my Gnosis, and it is partially my projection here, but this is how a lot of spirits want to be perceived. But this doesn't mean that you don't honour intelligences that can see way more of you than you can of them. So if you interact with an angelic entity or a demonic entity, you can see it as your equal if you want to. But the truth is that it's also going to be able to see more of you, more of your timeline, more of your potential outcomes than you consciously can. At which point there's a balance that's required between the right-hand path and the left-hand path. There's a balance between understanding that you are able to only see a small fraction of what your potential actually is, and therefore you can utilize a right-hand path approach to occultism without basically projecting all of your sovereignty into an external divinity. But then you can also utilize the left-hand path to actually see yourself as a deified consciousness in itself. Okay, so understand here that the soul is multiplicious. The higher self is going to align more, also known as the holy guardian angel. The higher self is going to align more with right-hand path related practices, because right-hand path practices are more about operating within the multiverse itself. A right-hand path occult practice or initiatory system will simply be the Sephiroth or Enochian magic. Okay, Enochian magic exploring the ethers and the different Enochian keys that grant you different layers of access to the celestial planes. But when you get to a certain point and you start to extend beyond the predefined form of these systems, the same with the dark matter, eventually you are going to start to reach the same place, if that makes sense. So let me explain this a little bit more. You could go through the entirety of the Sephiroth, and then you can keep exploring what we call the trans-Sephirothic realms, which are the much more unregulated and less tangible and more alien aspects of Sephirothic energy that are beyond structure and form in the positively charged void. And you can do the same in the dark matter area as well. You can extend beyond the Qliphoth, which is the Tree of Death, which is much more around destabilization, much more around rupture, and taking things away from you in order to experience a paradoxical liberation. So you can then explore the realms that are beyond the Qliphoth and move into the trans-Qliphothic realms. But if you keep going in both polarities, eventually you are going to reach a point where they merge together. Okay, and this is the absolute. Okay, this is the point in which the dualities actually meet. And if you go far enough within one polarity, you explore the Sephiroth, you go beyond, and then you move into, maybe you're moving through the ethers, you're moving through the higher aspects of existence itself. You are going to hit a threshold. Okay, and that threshold in Gnosticism could be referred to as the pleroma, the place of the eons. This threshold is basically the final net that is separating duality, that is separating universe A, being light matter and form, and universe B being dark matter, primordial chaos. When you go far enough in both polarities, you are going to move into the space of the absolute. Okay, if you go beyond the veils of both polarities, eventually you will return to a unified state. A unified state which is not abiding by the comfort of one polarity or the other. And this unified state is the natural state of the soul. This is the personal metagod. So if you explore light matter only, and only reach a certain point in your light matter exploration, then you will connect with your higher self. Maybe you will see the higher self as an external divinity, whatever that may be. You will connect with these higher aspects of yourself. This is for connecting to the higher self, the holy guardian angel, merging with it and restructuring your reality to be a vessel for your higher self, to be a vessel for your holy guardian angel, connecting to your true will in its totality. That is the purpose of light matter exploration. Light matter exploration, you are transfiguring your reality, shifting your vessel into a sustainable vehicle for the evolution of your soul, into a sustainable vehicle to carry forward your higher self gnosis. That is the purpose of light matter exploration. Sephirothic work, Enochian work, you are merging with higher aspects of yourself and learning how to bring that gnosis into your body. It is epic. That's what light matter is all about. Higher self-exploration. You then have dark matter. Left-hand path, if you want to refer to it in that way. Dark matter, exploration of the primordial chaos. So if you are connecting with your higher self, that aspect of your soul through light matter exploration, then through dark matter exploration, you are connecting more with the alternate self, or the shadow self, the personal daemon. At which point you are merging with your personal daemon and learning how to build an active relationship with it. So you see here that light and dark matter only connect to one aspect of your soul. So if you only explore dark matter, you will build a relationship with your shadow self, but your connection to the holy guardian angel, your higher self, will not be at its full capacity without reaching the same point within the opposite polarity. Just the same, you will stop growing past a certain point if you only explore light matter, because you are only going to be exploring what is predefined. Whereas the exploration of dark matter allow you to shape the journey accordingly and keep evolving beyond the constraints of what is pre-constructed. So light matter, higher self, dark matter, shadow self, you explore both of them together, walk what I call the Abraxian path, where you're basically walking both of them together. Then you are merging with your shadow self, your personal daemon, and you are also merging with your higher self, the holy guardian angel, and you are building a relationship with those two aspects of your soul. Now, what is in the middle is that primal self, the spirit animal. Okay, that true primordial intelligence of your soul. When I say primordial intelligence, I don't mean light or dark. When I say primordial, people might think, oh, that's dark matter. No, I'm referring to your primal self, which is not limited by duality at all. And it's this that allows you to shift beyond the constraints of predefined identity and into a state of consciousness which embodies the fluidity of the soul. The purpose of the spirit animal is to merge with the fluidity of the soul, exit a reality that is predefined, and to actually learn how to navigate life in a fluid way. In a fluid way whereby you're not feeding one predefined identity, but you're actually embodying that true primal explorer. That's what the spirit animal is for, the embodiment of the primal explorer. exploring reality according to the curiosity of the soul. And this naturally is going to have a deep connection to the curiosity of your inner child that you may have learnt is not safe to fully feel and embody. So you can see here that when you're building a connection with all three of these aspects, then they start to unify as one intelligence. And this is the personal absolute, the personal metagod. So if you explore light and dark matter far enough, you go beyond the Sephiroth, the tree of life, into the trans-Sephirothic realms, merging with higher aspects, more unregulated aspects of your higher self or holy guardian angel. You do the same in the dark matter with the Qliphoth. You go beyond the Qliphoth. You go into the veils that are beyond the Qliphoth. You go into the realms that are outside of the tree structure itself, merging with different levels of your shadow self, primal materia, not the primal materia, different aspects of shadow self, meaning alternate self. And in doing so, you are unlocking that primal intelligence of the spirit animal and learning how to embody the fluidity of your soul. You go far enough in both polarities, you will feel a unification. The veil will weaken to the point where you then stop striving towards one polarity or the other. Your goal then becomes the true intent of the soul, which is integration and vulnerability. The soul wants connection, the soul wants vulnerability. So when you are actually embarking on that pure path of individuation, you are not walking a path which is limited by one polarity. If you only walk one polarity, you're only going to connect with just one aspect of your soul. And then it's going to be a fragmented evolutionary process. You build a relationship with your shadow, you're building a relationship with the part of you that brings you what is hidden through the world around you, and you only build a relationship with your higher self, you are going to be trapped within predefined order. In other words, the shadow without balance with the higher self is going to lead you into nihilism and meaninglessness and fragmentation later down the line, and the higher self as a standalone thing is going to lead you into greater levels of imprisonment. So we have to balance them. And as we do so, we return to that true Abraxian state. Abraxas being the Gnostic deity, the supreme archon, that has the role and function of returning you to that pure state of integration. That state of integration, the return to the absolute, and the molding of your reality into harmony with the absolute. You are basically learning to become a vessel. Learning to become a vessel for this unified intelligence, the pure avatar of the weakened veil. Becoming God and the devil. Becoming angel and the demon. As one unified consciousness. This is the purpose of the personal metagod. And metagods are that unified intelligence that extend their tendrils into the lower dimensions of reality to extend their influence into the wider aspects of the cosmos. Without doing that, without extending that, they can't actually extend their influence and they can't actually fulfill their evolutionary purpose. So the concept of the metagod shows you that we have to experience separation. The concept of the metagod shows you that we have to experience separation in order to experience unity. We have to separate ourselves into the lower dimensions of reality to define meaning and evolution within the microcosm in order to then return to unity. Our role and responsibility is to return to unity, return to that unified state. The absolute, the pure representation of integration. So there are many ways that you can engage with the higher self, the shadow self, the spirit animal as individual intelligences, and as unified intelligences. On my Patreon, I have chants, consecrated chants, that I've spent a lot of time consecrating, that can be used to summon each of these consciousness individually. It's quite an intense endeavor when you are summoning your shadow self directly, the same with your higher self, the same with your spirit animal, even more so with your personal metagod. But this connection will happen naturally if you are embarking on true individuation, if you are actually integrating and you're finding the balance between the light and dark and you're utilizing both at their full potential through occult explorations or through your own individual trauma work, then you will build a very strong connection with all three of these aspects of self, and in doing so, they will integrate into one. And that will become your guiding force for your life. So you can interact with them rather, in the form of invocation, where you actually merge with that aspect of self. Very powerful and very dissolving endeavor. But the best way to do so and to actually anchor that consciousness into your being is to embark on both light matter evolutionary explorations and dark matter evolutionary explorations, be that through the Sephiroth, the Qliphoth, or other occult practices that have the goal of basically ripping apart the veil and unifying your consciousness. But you have to do so from a trauma-informed space, otherwise it's useless. Most occultists just want to stick to one polarity and that's it. But then that's a fragmented existence. That's then a fragmented evolutionary path. Working with both is absolutely essential to return to that true state of integration, which is the unified self, the personal metagod, the personal absolute. So I think that is everything that I need to discuss in today's topic. As I said, there are chants that you can use on my Patreon to summon these individual intelligences. So definitely check that out. First link in the description. But for now, thank you everybody. Definitely hit like and subscribe if this video was helpful to you, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.